It's spooky time.
And I have candy in my mouth.
And I have candy in my hand. Jolly Ranchers.
Yeah.
And you know what that means, Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
And with Halloween comes creepy stories, scary.
Creepy, scary, spooky stuff.
The dark, the mysterious.
Mm-hmm.
The flannel shirts and the backwards hats.
Oh, you're not wearing a flannel.
I'm not. But Mr. Ballen is. And that's who we're going to be watching. Oh, I know it's been a long time since we watched some Mr. Ballen. But we figure since it's Halloween, we're going to give you that trick and that treat. Top 3 stories that sound fake but are 100% real.
We have done at least one of these before.
Yeah, I think we've only done one.
And it was like one of the first Mr. Ballen videos that we've ever done.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like, we're going back to...
No, then we did that one that was like the lady had owed like 50 cents or something.
Yeah, so it's the third. This will be the third one.
Yeah.
But anyway, we first did it a long time ago, and so we're going to circle back around and do it again.
We were some of the first people to be reacting to Mr. Ballen, actually.
So Chad says.
I mean, he was even commenting on our videos. There's like 3 videos Mr. Ballen's commented on of ours.
Fucking crazy.
So fucking cool, really. Mr. Ballen, we love you. We're going to get back into some more Mr. Ballen. He has a way of gripping you with anticipation and fear and dread. He just does it all. So I'm looking forward to seeing what these stories are about.
Me too.
We're getting the 3-peat. If you guys are ready, we'll jump into this. We'll wait. Okay, let's do it.
Apologies in advance for my nasally voice. I've had some
Same.
pretty bad allergies over the last couple of days,
We have
and
COVID.
it just hasn't cleared up yet. Sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction, and today we're going to look at 3 stories that demonstrate that. But before we get into today's stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload 3 or 4 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, please ask the like button for a bite of their sandwich, and when they say yes, proceed to pack the biggest bite possible into your mouth. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. All right, let's get into today's stories.
Be riding horse. Okay, stop.
People who live on Andover Street on Detroit, Michigan's east side will be the first to tell you that the area is known for constant drug activity. On Thursday, November 9th, 2017, 2 Detroit Special Operations police officers began an operation known as a push-off on Andover Street. A push-off is when undercover cops pretend to be drug dealers, and then when customers come up to them and try to buy drugs, they arrest them and seize their vehicles. These particular officers that would be doing this push-off had been undercover for some time in the area, and so they had a local drug house they used for these types of operations. At some point that day, 2 potential customers came up to the fake drug house. They knocked on the door, and the undercover police officers opened up. They invited them inside, and then once these customers were inside sitting down, they asked the undercover cops if they could buy some drugs. And as soon as the cops heard this, they whipped out their badges, they drew their guns, and they ordered them on the ground. But these potential customers, they didn't get on the ground. Instead, they whipped out their badges and drew their guns, and they said, no, you get on the ground.
Wait.
Because it would turn out these customers were actually undercover police officers too, but they were from a different precinct, and so neither groups had any idea about the other. They had no clue that they were both undercover at the same time. Both
like
sets
Spider-Man
of undercover cops were so surprised by what was happening that instead of firing shots at each other, they just stayed in this really tense standoff, like that famous scene from The Office where they're all pointing guns at each other and they're trying to figure out who the double agent is. And so the police are doing that, periodically hurling insults and threats at the other side in an attempt to get them to stand down. But when neither side stood down, they all just eventually lowered their guns and then proceeded to beat the living crap out of each other. After the dust finally settled and all the haymakers had stopped, the 2 groups of police realized their mistake and apologized to each other. Luckily, none of the officers were badly hurt from this mix-up. However, 2 officers did have to go to the hospital, but for very minor injuries. One had a black eye and the other had a split lip. While Detroit's own chief of police and the media and the public at large have all come out and said this snafu was a total embarrassment, Others have said the officers involved might deserve a little bit of credit because, after all, their job was to be undercover, and apparently they were so good at being undercover that they didn't even know the other group was undercover too, and vice versa. So
Right.
perhaps they were just too good at their jobs.
Oh, wow.
You be the judge.
Voices.
The following story was pulled from a 1997 article in the British Medical Journal. The article was written by the psychiatrist who treated the patient, who will be the focal point of this story. The only reason I bring this up is because this story truly sounds made up. And it's not. One night in the winter of 1984, a healthy middle-aged woman, who we'll call Brenda for this story, was at her home in London reading a book when she suddenly heard a voice in her head. It said,
"Please don't be afraid. I know this must be shocking for you to hear me speaking to you like this, but this was the easiest way I could think of. My friend and I, we used to work at the Children's Hospital, and we would like to help you."
Brenda couldn't believe what was happening. She had never heard voices in her head before, and this voice that was speaking to her, it was so clear, and it did not sound like any voice she had heard before. And so at first, Brenda just sat on the couch and didn't do anything and just waited, hoping that maybe she was just imagining this.
Yeah.
But the voice in her head seemed to pick up on her reaction and said,
"Brenda, this is not a hallucination. We're real, and we want to help you."
Brenda did not believe it was real. She believed she had just lost her mind. And so for the rest of
Right.
the night, she just completely ignored the voice in her head. And first thing the next morning, she went to her doctor's office and said, "Please help me." The doctor referred her to a psychiatrist. And so she went over to the psychiatrist's office. And after they performed an evaluation of Brenda, they said, "Look, I don't really know why you're hearing these voices. There's no clear medical explanation for why." And so Brenda was ultimately diagnosed with something called functional hallucinatory psychosis, which basically means Brenda was hallucinating, but there was no clear reason why. The psychiatrist began treating Brenda with an antipsychotic drug as well as with supportive counseling. Over the next couple of weeks, as Brenda diligently took her medications and went to her appointments, the voices eventually stopped. And so Brenda went into her psychiatrist's office and she said, "Doc, you've saved me. The voices are gone. I'm so happy." And the psychiatrist would later recall that Brenda was visibly relieved. It was obvious that
no
she was
shit.
not making this up, that she really believed that she had these voices and now they were gone. And so after Brenda left the office, she actually went on vacation with her family outside of London just to celebrate the fact that she had not, in fact, lost her mind. But while she was away on holiday, she started hearing the voices again. And this time, they told her she had to get back to London as soon as possible because there was something terribly wrong with her. And they gave her a very specific street address that she was supposed to go to seek treatment. And so Brenda is horrified that the voices are back in the first place, but what she's really scared about is that maybe there's some truth to what these voices are telling me. Maybe there is something wrong with her. And so Brenda ran to her husband and she explained what happened, and he was very reassuring and said, "Look, honey, you should just totally ignore the voices again. There's probably nothing wrong with you. Just try to relax and have a nice vacation." But Brenda could not relax. She could not ignore the voices because they were constantly telling her,
"You need to leave. You need to go back. There's something wrong with you."
and so finally, Brenda convinced her family to end the vacation early, and they headed back to London. And as soon as they got there, Brenda made her husband come with her, and they drove to the street
I would have
address
to
the
go
voices had given her.
see what
When
it
they
was.
got to this very specific location, they found themselves standing in front of the brain scan unit of a London hospital. Brenda and her husband were totally shocked, but before they could even react to what they were looking at, the voices in Brenda's head came back, and they told her,
"You need to go inside and you need to request a brain scan for 2 reasons. 1, there's a tumor in your brain. And 2, this tumor is causing your brainstem to swell."
At this point, Brenda was so scared that this information might actually be true that despite what her husband was saying, she went right inside the brain scan unit and she requested this scan. And when they asked her, who's the doctor that referred you over here,
doctor in
she
my
said, "I don't
brain."
have one." And then she ultimately told them that, well, there are voices in my head that told me to come over here and get this scan. Now, the doctors at the brain scan facility were not totally like, "Get out of here," but instead they said, "Look, this is a very expensive scan. We can't just let you in here and get a scan because the voices told you to. We need a clinical reason to do it. We need a doctor's note saying you need this scan." And so they turned Brenda away, and Brenda now is just a complete wreck. She ends up calling her psychiatrist, and she explains the situation about getting this address and being told to get this brain scan. And after a few minutes of hearing her story, her psychiatrist says, okay, you know what? I will call over and I will get you an appointment to get a brain scan because I want you to be at ease. And it seems like this is probably the only way we're going to be able to do that. And so after this conversation, the psychiatrist got in touch with this hospital and he requested the brain scan for Brenda. And about a month later, Brenda went in, she had the scan done, and sure enough, she had a brain tumor and her brainstem was swollen. The doctors couldn't believe it because Brenda was showing absolutely no signs of having this condition. And so they told her that, well, you know, you can just wait and see what happens. This might not have any effect on you. And so you can just wait to see if you get symptoms eventually. Or we can go in and do the surgery and remove this tumor. But of course, doing brain surgery comes with some very significant risks. After thinking it over with her family, Brenda decided to go with immediate surgery. And after telling her doctors as much, the voices in her head told her that she had made the right decision. A couple of days later, Brenda went in and her surgery was a huge success. After she regained consciousness in the recovery room, the voices spoke to her. They said,
"We are pleased to have helped you. Goodbye."
After that, Brenda never heard the voices ever again, and she never had any complications from the surgery or from the tumor. And to this day, the medical community still has no idea who those voices in her head really were. Michael Packard might be the luckiest or unluckiest person alive. In 2001, when Michael was 38 years old, he was on a flight over Costa Rica when the small plane he was on crashed. The pilot, co-pilot, and a passenger were all killed on impact, but Michael and the 4 other passengers, they survived the crash, but they were all left badly injured and stranded in a very remote section of the jungle. The survivors attempted to use the downed plane's radio equipment to send out a distress signal to try to get someone to come out and help them, but they had no way of knowing if anybody was receiving their signal. And so all they could do was just send it out and then wait and hope somebody found them before they all died. And sure enough, 48 hours after crashing, rescuers were able to hack their way deep into the jungle where Michael and the other survivors were, and they were all saved. While Michael was recovering in the hospital, a doctor told him that based on his injuries, he would not have survived another night out in that jungle. The chances of even being in a plane crash are astronomically low. The odds are about 1 in 5 million, with some places giving odds as low as 1 in 20 million. To put that in perspective, Michael was far more likely to have been struck by lightning, which is about a 1 in 1 million chance, than he was to have been in that plane crash. But that plane crash would not be the last time that Michael defied the odds and did something totally unbelievable. Over the next couple of decades, Michael, who was a commercial diver by trade, would survive not 1, but 2 significant encounters with great white sharks off the coast of California. Some of Michael's friends would not be so lucky. Michael would get lost at sea, like really lost, like treading out in the middle of the ocean with no land in sight for hours lost. But miraculously, a boat would find him and save him. What's this man out here doing? And Michael would discover the body of a long-time missing person hidden underneath the water about 60 feet down off the coast of Massachusetts. But of all the improbable exploits of Michael's life, none is more unbelievable than what happened to him in 2021, which experts are saying he had about a 1 in 1 trillion chance of experiencing. On the morning of June 11th, 2021, Michael, who was 57 years old at the time, hopped in a boat with his longtime diving partner, Josiah. Once they were all situated and they had all their equipment inside of the boat, they took off and headed for the open waters right off the coast of Cape Cod, Massachusetts, where they planned to do some lobster diving. A popular way to retrieve lobsters is to literally just dive down and by hand pick them up and bring them back to the surface. And so that day, that's what Michael and Josiah planned to do. Once they reached this spot right off the coast, Michael put on all of his scuba diving equipment and hopped in the water. Josiah did not put on any diving equipment because he was not going to be getting in the water for this dive. Instead, he would remain on the boat and help Michael get in and out of the water. He'd pull lobsters up onto the boat, and he was also there in case of an emergency, he could call for help. And so just after 6 a.m., once Michael was in the water and signaled he was good to go, he dove down below, and after a little while, he came back up, but with a relatively small haul of lobsters. And so the two men figured that, well, I guess today is just not a great day for catching lobsters. But regardless, for the next couple of hours, Michael continued to go down and catch as many lobsters as he possibly could. By 8 a.m., Michael had captured approximately 100 pounds of lobsters that were now in the boat. And so Michael and Josiah were actually starting to feel pretty good about this particular trip. And so Michael decided he would go back down one more time and try to get just a few more lobsters before they called it a day. And so Josiah remembers watching Michael, who was in the water. As he put his mouthpiece back in, he signaled up to Josiah that he was good to go. And Josiah watched as he disappeared below the surface. The water was very calm, and Josiah is just kind of scanning out across the water. And then all of a sudden, this eruption of white water came rushing up to the surface right where Michael had gone down below. And so right away, Josiah leaned out over the edge of the boat to see if he could look down and see his friend, but he didn't see Michael anywhere. Instead, he saw something massive moving around underneath them. After Michael had broken the surface on this final dive down to get more lobsters, his plan was to sink down to the bottom of the ocean at about 60 feet and then go hunting for lobsters. But when he had descended to about 45 feet, he felt something smash into him from behind that felt like a truck hitting him, and then everything around him went totally pitch black. The impact of whatever it was that hit him had caused his mouthpiece to get blown out of his mouth. So he doesn't have air, and he starts fumbling around to find his mouthpiece, but he can't find it. And as he's fumbling around, his hands are making contact with what feels like walls all around him. He was inside of an enclosed space. But when he had touched these walls, they were not normal walls. They were soft, but they were hard at the same time, and they seemed to be moving, like they were pulsating or quivering. The space he was in was fairly large, and it was not completely flooded with water. It was like Michael had slipped into this air pocket.
A whale?
But this air pocket was not stationary. It was moving and pretty fast because the water that was inside of it was violently sloshing all around. Michael could hear it slapping up against the walls. As Michael continued to panic and fumble around for his mouthpiece, he started to notice intense pressure on his legs, but he had no idea what was causing it, and because it's pitch black, he couldn't see what it was. Finally, Michael found the line that was connected to his mouthpiece. He jammed it in his mouth and he took a long inhale. And now that he could breathe again, he had this horrifying thought. Have I been swallowed by a shark? He instinctively began feeling around for the shark's teeth, but there were no teeth inside of this space. Instead, it was just these walls that continued to shift and move all around him. And that's when it dawned on him. He had been swallowed, but not by a shark. He had been swallowed by a whale. For nearly 45 seconds, Michael was trapped inside the closed mouth of a humpback whale. Despite their enormous size, they can be up to 60 feet long and weigh up to 70,000 pounds, they only eat small fish. So when this particular whale realized Michael was not a tiny fish, it began violently swinging its head side to side to try to dislodge Michael, and that caused that eruption of white water to go to the surface that Josiah saw.
Trust
and
me,
after
baby.
a few good
I don't want to
shakes,
be in there.
Michael was spat out of this whale's mouth. Michael remembers suddenly being in the open water with enough light coming down that he could see around him. The water was very turbulent and churning, and he recalled as he made his way to the surface, looking straight down and seeing the tail fin of this enormous whale swimming away from him. Michael made his way to the surface and he flagged down Josiah, who boated over to him. He pulled him back into the boat, and Michael, who was totally traumatized by what happened, could only say to Josiah that he was inside of it and that it tried to eat him. After Josiah brought Michael back to shore and called the authorities, Michael was rushed to a hospital where he was evaluated, and unbelievably, he suffered really no injuries. He had some significant bruising to his legs where the whale had actually clamped down on him. That was the pressure he felt in his legs. The mouth of the whale was closing on his legs. But besides that, there really wasn't any other injuries. And so later that day, he was discharged. It's believed the whale was a juvenile that had been seen in the area that was about 30 to 35 feet long, and that had just accidentally scooped Michael up. The whale was certainly not trying to hurt Michael. Whales, especially humpback whales, are not in the business of hurting people. But in this exchange with Michael, Michael could have very easily died. He could have drowned or suffocated inside the mouth of this whale, or he could have just died from blunt force trauma. but luckily he didn't. Despite how terrifying this incident sounds, Michael was incredibly casual in all of his interviews about this. He just kind of acted like, these things kind of happen, whales come out of nowhere, they just scoop you up, it happens. And he would tell the incredulous reporters, who just could not believe this guy was real, that as soon as he was better, he was getting back in the water and going lobster diving. So that's going to do it, guys.
So the first one, the police interaction, that shit, I have seen so many videos of like cops pulling over other cops and stuff. And it is always this awkward, like, but I'm the man. No, right now
but I'm
the
on
man.
duty, yeah.
But really I'm the man. Like, it's just this big, like,
yeah.
Who's the man, though? And, like, now that they have to have body cams on all the time, it's even more awkward than you could imagine, because it's like, I pulled you over, guy.
Yeah,
like,
there's a reason that I pulled you over. Sorry.
I can't just be like, you're one of the good men, so, like, good luck.
I think it's funny how they were like, oh.
Well, we can't shoot you, so we'll just fight it out. That's funny. I have heard the story of the whole...
Oh, the voices.
The voices telling that lady that she needed to go to the hospital. Well, I think there's, like, a few movies that have been made that are similar to that. Like, the overall theme is like this guiding voice. There's that one Will Ferrell movie where there's like the narrator that he can hear.
Yeah. So like anytime that I think of like voices, I'm like, oh hell no,
like schizophrenia.
Yeah,
or something
I instantly
like that.
thought of schizophrenia.
Yeah.
But I was just like, well, if I had a voice in my head that was like, hey yo, maybe you should play this lottery ticket, or hey, you have a tumor in your brain, or no, that's gonna give you food poisoning. Like, I wouldn't be opposed to it.
I was waiting for her to, like, she went to her therapist and then she wakes up and the next day it's like, don't waste your time on me.
I mean, I'm kind of surprised that they didn't. Like, I would be kind of afraid.
Oh, you goddamn right. Yeah, this is all that whole scenario. I think that woman acted incredibly brave.
Yeah.
With being forthcoming about that situation, Given my own situations with OCD, it's not really a voice or anything, because that's an auditory hallucination, But, like, admitting that something's going on is hard to do. It's hard to be like, hey, I'm feeling off.
Yeah.
And so she's telling her husband, she's telling her doctors and everything, that's the right move.
Well, and it was like so not normal for her.
Right.
Like it's not like, oh, I have this long-standing history.
Normal for anybody, but
I mean,
the fact that
some people's
specifically
reality,
where she was told to go, specifically what was going on.
No, if I had a voice that was like, hey, da-da-da-da-da street.
Yeah.
You bet your ass I'm going there.
Well, check this out. I do know that, like, some symptoms of having a tumor or shit like that, like auditory hallucinations and shit like that,
really?
Can be caused by tumors. So who knows? The human brain is so fucking crazy, and like there's only so much that we know about it. That who fucking knows? I mean, it's a receptor for a lot of things. I do know that there's like religions based around aliens, and they like
not following, but okay.
There's this one, I can't remember exactly who it was. I think it might have been Louis Theroux, who was interviewing all these different UFO type people, and there was one in New Mexico near Area 51 who connected to aliens, had like a connection and could channel aliens, and it was similar to that, where they're telling me now, like they told me before, that you would be here and this is the discussion that we needed to have.
Right.
So that kind of reminded me of that too. A lot of Godzilla movies and shit have like aliens that like communicate to the big monsters that fight Godzilla through telepathy. Like Mothra has those two little twin fairy ladies that connect with Mothra. So
I don't know. I know that if that happened to me, like I would personally be like, well, it just proves, like you know, if I questioned my religion before,
It was
that's
an angel.
something, you know. Like, I would definitely be
I'm
like,
on a mission from God. What was it? We were
go to
watching.
the receptionist. I have an appointment. Or no, do you have an appointment? Well, God sent me here.
I mean,
know.
I'm surprised you didn't get sent somewhere else.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
But-
that worked out well in her favor.
The last one, dude, this guy survived a plane crash, being shipwrecked out in the
I
middle
want
of
to
the
know
ocean.
what this man is doing to get involved in these
Right,
types
is he like
of
special
situations.
forces or something? Like, what kind of operations is this guy doing? The first time I'm in a plane that crashes or I'm out stranded in the ocean, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna be on this porch.
I've changed my life. Yeah.
I may go to Red Lobster.
Well,
That's as
that's
far
what I
as
was thinking. I was like, oh man, like, you know, he's almost 60 and he's out here at 6 a.m. catching lobster. Like, that's fucking cool. And then I thought,
No.
I would enjoy all of that.
You know what I'm doing at 6 a.m.?
Hold on. Except for, could you really just pick up this little lobster who's just going about his business?
Little, you
Okay,
think.
maybe big. This big lobster going about his business, doing his damn thing, starting his routine for the morning, and you're like, you know what? Right pickings.
Look,
Okay, thank
one
you.
of them things is going to latch onto my finger, my Johnson, something.
I mean,
like,
apart
I'm
from
not
all of that, I couldn't just be like, I'm just gonna take you out of your environment and eat you. Bye.
But you're also not out here surviving plane crashes and all this other shit
This
either.
is true.
So,
This is true.
wow, Mr. Ballen.
Very interesting stories. He has a lot of the top 3. I did this. Top three stories. This is part 14. We
It
need to
is.
go back and watch all of them.
Yes, John B. Allen bringing it to y'all, the Trillist.
Yeah.
He's out here telling these stories. Don't forget to eat all of your friends' sandwiches, like he said. But go subscribe to his channel, buy some of his merch, get you a cool backwards hat like we both rock. Hang out with the cool kids. Love you some Mr. Ballen.
Yeah.
Hope you appreciated our reaction to this. It's been a while for us, and I'm so stoked to be reacting some more of his stuff.
Yeah.
If you guys enjoyed it, you could give us a like. You could subscribe to our channel. You could even give us recommendations for stuff you want to see us react to.
Yeah, you can do that down in the comments below. You can do that on our Discord, or if you are a patron on our Patreon, you can leave it there.
Taco Bell Bart.
Quit.
If you like live streams, you can always check us out on Monday and Thursday evenings at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time, where we'll be live streaming some crafts, maybe playing some video games. Sometimes we just kick back and hang out with you guys. You never know what we're going to be doing, but you know what else we could get into on Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time if you'd like to. Follow us on Twitch, and you could see us there. We're reacting to stuff live.
Yeah.
Hang out and be a part of the process. We'd love to see you there. But I think that's going to do it
gonna do it.
for this video.
See you guys.
Bye.